The link. Okay, I'll just share the link in WhatsApp. So I've shared it. Okay, so those online can hear us, right?
Recording in progress.
Good afternoon once again. I think you can log out now. Go back. We are going to continue with the COVID framework. I believe for the last week before we went on break, we had an overview of what the framework is and then the domains in the COVID framework. So we'll continue with the goals and metrics of the COVID framework. And then we'll also look at successful implementation of the framework. What are some of the things we need in place to successfully implement the framework? Today I'm having some slight sore throat, so pardon me. Okay, so these are the goals of the COVID framework. And this particular goal, I think even in explaining what the framework is about, we always hammered on the fact that its focus is aligning IT with business objectives. That's actually one of the goals of the framework. And then there is also enabling information quality and reliability. When we say information quality, what comes to mind? What does it mean? Oh, oh, okay, thank you. How is it taken? One. Oh, okay, thank you. I don't.
Yes.
You never know who knows my wife here. Put one. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay. So when we say information quality, what comes to mind? Information quality. Information quality. What comes to mind? Information quality. What comes to mind? Yeah. Yes. Information that is fit for purpose or fit for use. That's when we say that information is quality information. And then how about reliability? Information reliability. It's something credible, something you can depend on, a kind of information you can trust. So one of the goals of the COVID is to ensure that the information that comes out of our IT systems are quality and then reliable as well. Then another goal of COVID is to ensure risk management and then compliance. Then optimizing IT resources, their utilization, and also capability development. So we'll look at each of these goals one after the other. What falls under each goal? So with the first goal, aligning IT with business objectives. One, we are looking at ensuring that the IT strategy supports the organizational goals. We have the organization's goals, what the organization wants to achieve. What are we putting in place in terms of IT? What are we putting in place, or whatever strategy we have pertaining to our IT resources. To what extent do they align and support the goals the organization has? That's one of the goals of COVID. Then also achieving business value through IT investment. Whatever investment we are going to put into our IT resources, what business value are we driving from it? If we don't drive business value from that IT investment, then it's not worth pursuing. So these are the two items that counts under aligning IT with business operations or business strategy. Then another goal of the COVID is to enable information quality and then information reliability. So when I asked about reliability, somebody said accuracy, right? Yes. So ensuring the accuracy and reliability of the information, that's also another goal of COVID. Then also establishing controls for data integrity and confidentiality. Let me ask again what data integrity means. Data integrity, what does it mean? When we say data integrity, what comes to mind?
Data is access is restricted.
Okay. So yes, it's more of confidentiality. Okay, but data integrity, what comes to mind when we hear data integrity?
Yes.
Accuracy. Accuracy, right? No, but we've already spoken about reliability as a different. Yes. So data accuracy, data integrity simply tells us that that data itself is believable, is rightly formatted. For example, if you have a data, let's take a bank, you have a data for your customers and that date of birth, or let's say something like age, under age, you don't expect to find a word. So under age, you don't expect to find something like A, B, or C. You expect numbers, right? Under date of birth, you expect a date format. You don't expect to find maybe words or Roman numerals. That's what we mean by data integrity. The data is such that you can trust that particular data. It's in the right format. Okay, so one of the goals or under the information quality and reliability goals is also ensuring controls for integrity and confidentiality. So you put in controls to ensure data integrity and then also ensure data confidentiality. I think you explained the confidentiality, limited access. You are certain that this data is not exposed to unauthorized access. Then we also have another goal of ensuring risk management and compliance. So under this particular goal, we say we are looking at identifying and managing IT-related risk. So first we identify the risk, and then how do we manage them? What are some of the IT-related risks we can think of? In an organization, what are some of the IT-related risks we can think of? In an organization, IT-related risk, okay. Pardon? Loss of data, yes, that's one of the IT-related risks. Any other IT-related risk in an organization? Where's NIT man? He didn't come today. Hey, NIA man, he didn't come.
Yeah, true.
Oh, okay. Who is the other NIA man? Oh, okay. I didn't know. It's only the other guy I knew. Okay. NIA man. So you tell us some, because I know you guys have a lot of like IT related risk in terms of the nature of your job and even what you handle. Can you think of any other IT? Pardon? Cyber security is also another. So inappropriate access. Okay, any other? Data getting what? Compromise. Okay, I think that's related to the cyber security one. Because when I heard data, I thought you were even going to talk of corruption, data being corrupted. So that's also another IT related risk. Any other? I think you are all thinking in the purely like technical risk. Why is nobody talking about the possibility of the devices being stolen? It's also an IT related risk because the server you are keeping your data on could actually, like if let's say it's an in-house server, the device itself can get stolen. It's also an IT related risk because this is risk that affects our IT resources. And I think it does happen like in some organizations where like either outsiders or even employees will find a way of like taking the organization's IT resources.
Lack of privacy too, as part of IT.
Lack of privacy. It depends on the type of privacy we are talking about. If that privacy is related to the either the IT resources or the information on them, then yes. Yes, then that's IT related risk. If that incompetency is coming from people who are manning the IT system, then yes, we can. Yes. So for instance, let's say there's a new technology. Now we are talking of quantum computing. Let's assume your organization is lucky to have quantum computers. You don't have anybody that can even like manage these computers. That's also a risk. Yes. So if it's related to capability of the people managing the IT system, we can talk of that. Most often, some of these things, how you explain it is what will justify if it qualifies there or not. Okay.
Yeah, with the not used to that is like fire.
Of fire outbreak, yes. If so it's part of the physical damage. We are talking about the physical risk. So he has mentioned fire, something like that, where you keep your servers, your data centers. Fire could guard the place, and then that's also a risk, an IT related risk. Okay. So we also say ensuring compliance with relevant laws and then regulations at any point in time. If you are implementing the COVID, it ensures that, first of all, you identify the relevant regulations that governs whatever data you are taking, especially of your customers. Once you identify these regulations, it also ensures that you comply with these regulations. So ensuring compliance with relevant laws and regulations is also another goal of the COVID. If, for instance, the NIA, I don't know, are you registered with the Data Protection Agency? You are, okay. I was thinking because NIA is a government institution, they will not be, but put the NIA aside. For other organizations, there are some data if you want to take about people, you will need to register with the Data Protection Agency. And then they ensure that once you register with them, they will ensure that the medium through which you are taking this data is secure. It's actually soundproof. I remember I used to be with an organization. I was a data analyst there. And when we were registering with the Data Protection Agency, we first had to give them proof that our website is secure. So they had to conduct some penetration testing on our website and give us a certificate to show that the website is safe and secure. And then we present it to the Data Protection Agency before they can even give us that license to be able to take data. So you identify the relevant regulations and rules, and then you comply with them. This is also part of the goals of the COVID. Then optimizing IT resources. One of it is to ensure efficient use of IT resources. We've already explained efficiency a couple of times, where you try to be effective using the least amount of resources possible, and then minimizing wastage and then redundancy. Then another, what's the name? Another goal is optimizing IT resource utilization. So yeah, I think we already have this. Okay. Now let's look at COVID metrics. COVID metrics. When we say a metric, what does a metric mean? When we say something is a metric? A measure, yes. A metric is basically a way of measuring something. So we are saying that we've seen the goals, where the goals are about optimizing resources, aligning IT resources with business strategies and everything. But how do we ensure that we are really meeting these goals? How do we ensure that? So we are saying that to achieve these goals, COVID provides a framework of measurable goals and performance indicators across the various domains. We've spoken about the domains. So these metrics are what we use to determine if we, in a way, we are meeting these goals. One thing about the metrics is that these metrics, just like in our explanation, they should be what? Measurable goals. The metrics should always be measurable. Typically, you have these metrics being measured in numbers. They could be numbers. For example, if we are looking at customer satisfaction, we want to see to what extent your IT investments are enhancing customer satisfaction. This should be measured in numbers. It could also be in percentage. You want to reduce the number of complaints you have by investing in IT. Let's say enough of the bank. What other organization can we think of? Can anybody use his or her organization as example? Any organization? Any other organization? I thought you guys were going to give us an example. Yes, then let's hear from one of you. Let's hear from one of you. Let's hear from one of you. Airport. Okay, you are with the airport. Okay, okay. So let's take the airport, for instance. The number of times, maybe you want to invest in IT and reduce the number of times flights are rescheduled. Once you do something like this, at any point in time, you should be able to measure to what extent the flight rescheduling, to what extent has it changed? Something like that, when we say something measurable. So if, let's say, in a week, 5 flights were typically being rescheduled, now you've invested in IT, you should be able to tell that now, in a week, only 2 flights are rescheduled. Something of this sort. So it should always be measurable. So we'll look at the various metrics. So these are the questions you should be able to answer as an organization. Is IT performance better than last year? So when you use the metrics, these are the questions you should be able to answer. So let's take, instead of saying a week, with your example, we're talking about previously every week, it was 5 flights were being rescheduled. Now we've invested in IT and it has reduced to 2. So you should be able to answer that question. Last year, how many flights were we rescheduling every week on the average? This year, now that we have invested in IT, on the average, how many flights do we reschedule every week? These are the questions that you should be able to answer when you have the right metrics in place. So if, let's say, after investing in IT, you still cannot tell whether there has been an improvement from the previous year or not, then it means you are not using the right metric. Does that make sense? There's a question.
We're getting global registration from Africa.
Okay.
So there's invested in one particular issues. If an African can not verify the African, the African never register. So that will reduce the number of global registrations. Now,
So he just gave a very nice example. People were registering multiple times. So they invested in a system. Now, if they are to find a metric, one thing the metric can help them, or if the metric is good, it will help them to know if from last year, the number of double registrations they have as against this year where they have invested in that particular system, is there a difference? So the metric will help them to answer that kind of question. Then the other question the enterprise should be able to answer is what the enterprise is getting from the IT investments. So in his case, for instance, every double registration is a waste of money, because double registration means you are printing the card twice.
when you global registration, you invest the time
Good. So that's another one, the time it will consume. It will waste a lot of people's time because people who are yet to register will be in the queue whilst you are wasting time on somebody who has already registered. And even the human resources, you are stressing the human resources. So if one person has the ability to attend to 200 people, if there are no duplicates, then that person will be fully utilized because that person will be able to attend to all 200. But if there are 50 duplicates, it means effectively the number the person has attended, the staff has attended to is 150 because the 50 were duplicates. Yeah, so that's one of the, so it helps us to tell what the enterprise is getting from its IT investments. Then another question we can answer from here is, how can the enterprise benchmark performance? When we say benchmarking performance, it simply means what can we use as a way to indicate performance or to tell what performance is good and what performance is not good. So having metrics in place helps us to tell how the enterprise can benchmark performance. What do you use to measure performance? Then what should the enterprise do in the absence of these measurable metrics? If we have the metric, we can easily tell what we can do in the absence of these measurable metrics. One of, I don't know if it's okay to go into that, but typically where there are no measurable metrics, there are some other options available. We have something like loss expectancy, either a single loss expectancy or annual loss expectancy. What does loss expectancy mean? This is what loss expectancy means. It means if at any point in time, any IT resource is compromised, what is the loss we will suffer? So for example, we want to invest in this laptop, but we cannot quantify the benefit we are getting from the laptop. We cannot quantify it. The suggestion here is that we should find an alternative metric we'll use. And that alternative metric will be fine. What loss are we going to incur if we don't have the laptop? Please, does that make sense? You cannot measure the benefit you are getting from the laptop, but at least you can tell the loss you will suffer if you don't have the laptop. Does that make sense? Okay, so in the absence of the metrics, you can rely on what we call the loss expectancy. What loss will you suffer when you don't invest in that IT resource? Now we've spoken about the metrics, but what makes a good metric? What makes a good metric? Let's say as a manager in your organization, you are coming up with metrics and you have subordinates who have also suggested some items to be measured. But what makes it a good metric? How will you tell a subordinate that no, this metric needs to meet this and that criteria before we can effectively utilize it or benefit from it? So these are the characteristics or the things that makes a good metric. So we are saying a good metric generally satisfies the following criteria. One is, it is consistently measured. A good metric should be consistently measured. This year, you don't say that your customer satisfaction is 85%. And then next year, you say that customer satisfaction is 4.5, like 4.5 stars or whatever. It doesn't make sense. If you are measuring customer satisfaction as a percentage, then keep customer satisfaction as a percentage. If you are measuring it as a rating, either on a scale of 1 to 5 or on a scale of 1 to 10, keep it that way. Every year, you have it on a scale of 1 to 10. If you do that, one of the reasons why it needs to be consistent is that year in, year out, you can actually compare between two different years in the same organization. An example, we have measured customer satisfaction over 5 years. In year 1, customer satisfaction, we're measuring it as a percentage. It was 80%. In year 2, it is 83%. We can easily tell that customer satisfaction in year 2 was better than customer satisfaction in year 1. But if we don't do that, and then we are not consistent and we change the metric. So in year 1, we say it was 80%. In year 2, we say it is 3.7 stars. How can we tell whether customer satisfaction in year 1 was better than customer satisfaction in year 2 or the other way around? So because of that, it needs to be consistently measured. If you are using numbers, use numbers. If you are using ratings, use ratings. If you are using percentages, use percentages throughout. How that makes sense? So that's one of the criteria a good metric should satisfy. Then we are also saying that a good metric should be easy to gather data on. A good metric should be easy to gather data on. Let's look at an example. Customer satisfaction. I think it's easy to gather data on customer satisfaction, right? It's easy to gather data on customer satisfaction because we can conduct a survey. We can give our customers survey to feel and tell us what they feel about our services. That's something we can easily do. So such a metric is feasible, is sustainable. Let's take another one, like maybe effectiveness of our IT infrastructure. When we invest in IT, we can easily see to what extent it is meeting the intended purpose of that investment. So we can easily measure those kind of things. But if you want to look at something like maybe happiness among staff, like this is not something we can easily gather data on. This is not something we can, in fact, even if the staff says they are not happy, happiness means different things to different people. The happiness might not even be related to your IT investments. It could be as a result of different things. People could come to work not being happy, and it might not be because of your IT investments. People could come being happy, and it's not because you have invested in any particular system. So whatever metric we are choosing should be something that is easy to gather data on. Then it should be expressed as numbers, percentages, or units of measurement. Essentially, we are just recouping what we have in the point 1, consistency. Yes, the only thing is that the consistency requires that we keep one particular way of expressing it. But we are saying that there are different ways of expressing them. Any of them is okay, as long as you are consistent with it. So you could measure your metrics as numbers. For example, if you want to take something, a KPI like maybe profit, a KPI like profit is measured in numbers, the amount. So if you decide that you want to use profit as an indicator or a metric, then every year the profit figure you have is actually a number. You could also decide that you want it in percentage, something like return on investment. So instead of just the profit figure, you decide to go for return on investment. Return on investment is measured in percentage. So every single year, you have it as a percentage. Or it could also be a unit. When we're talking of customer satisfaction, we said that the customer satisfaction could also be measured on a scale. So on a scale of 1 to 5, that's a unit. So you could have something like 3.5 for a particular given period. A given period, you can have something like 4.5 or any other thing. Okay, so these are mostly how metrics, good metrics can be measured. Then last but not the least, we're also saying that contextually, it should be specific. It should be very specific to a particular context. When we say context, context in business simply means at a particular time in a particular environment. That's context. At a particular time in a particular environment. Let's go back to your example about the airport. We are looking at flight cancellation. Flight cancellation could be different when we are in the Harmattan, and it could also be different when we are in other seasons, because I know in the Harmattan sometimes you have challenges with these flights. I remember somewhere, I think it was somewhere 2014, I was in Accra. We were coming to Tamale here, and then we were waiting. I want to believe mostly the flight that comes is the same one that comes to pick. They were delaying, and the information we got is that those who took off before us, when they came to Tamale, they couldn't land. They had to roam for a while. They couldn't land, and then they got back. So you realize that in Hamatan, the situation should be different than other times. So that's what we mean by context specific. So if you are measuring, let's say, flight rescheduling or cancellation, it should be specific to something like during the Hamatan. How is it? That's what we mean by context specific, so that you know that this particular metric you are measuring is related to these variables or these conditions. Okay, so that's what we mean by context specific. Context could also be referring to the time period or even the organization involved or the unit within the organization. Okay. There are different types of metrics over here. I think the most complicated are the service metrics. Let's take them one after the other. We have the technology metrics. In IT itself, when you talk of technology metrics, it means we are looking at metrics which are measured purely based on technological resources. An example is this. Let's come back to the NIE. NIE, let's say you have some number of servers. At any point in time, you can increase the capacity of your servers. It could be vertical increment or horizontal. Either you are increasing the number of servers you have or the capacity. You could also increase, if it's something on your network, you could also increase your network bandwidth. These are the things we mean when we say technology metrics. Metrics which are measured purely by technological resources. In the context of a bank, we could have something like, if let's say the bank has its own server, now they have added more servers. So adding more servers, that's a technology metric. If they used to have 3 data centers, now they have 4 data centers. That's a technology metric. If they are still maintaining the 3 data centers, but now instead of 1 gigabyte hard disk or 1 gigabyte RAM, now their computers have 5 gigabytes RAM or 6 gigabytes. That is technology metric. So the metric over here is based on what? Technological resources. How that makes sense? Then we also have the process metric. The process metric basically measures whatever change or improvement we have based on a process. Please don't confuse the process with the service. When we get to the service, I will expand on the service. The process is actually part of a service. An example of a process could be what? Let's take it, withdrawing money from an account. It's a process. Withdrawing money from an account. But if you look at the banking whole activity itself, right from everything the server does, that's a server. I say server, what's the name? Teller. Everything the teller does, that's a service. But within the service, we have processes. So sometimes these metrics can be based on processes. The process is just a unit in the service. So I've given an example of the process being the withdrawal of money from a bank account. That's a process. You can try to measure how effective that process has gotten over time. It's something like admission in a university. You try to measure how easy the admission process has become. That is a process metric. So the process metric basically measures just an activity, improvements in that particular activity. We call that process metric. But a service metric is where several processes come together to render a particular service, or to render, for lack of better word, let me say render a particular service, but basically like to satisfy a particular need. Then we call that service metric. So the service metrics one service metric could be made up of several different process metrics. Does that make sense? It doesn't. Okay, let me go back to the process again. The process is just an activity. The process, it is just an activity.
So I say the process states.
The process is what? Yes, the process is a stage in the service. Does that make sense? Yes. So the process is just a stage, just like you said, it's just a stage, it's an activity. But then when several processes come together, that's where we have a service. Several processes are involved in a service. Let me give examples of the process again. If we go to the airport, the checking in is a distance, a process. Look at that, the checking in is a process. Passing through that machine, that's also a process. So we can measure, we can have some metrics about the checking in. When the passenger gets there, the time the passenger checks in, we can measure some stuff about it. After the passenger has checked in also, even passing through the immigration side, it's also a process. We can measure something about it. Being at the waiting area before boarding is also a process. But the service starts right from where I buy my ticket. If let's say I'm in Accra, I'm in Tamale, right from where I buy my ticket till I'm in Accra, that is the service you are rendering to me. But this service is made up of different processes. I hope that makes sense. Okay. So, pardon? I wouldn't necessarily say that. I wouldn't necessarily say that. The service metric basically tries to evaluate or tries to like measure relating to the whole service, the whole, like right from start. So if we look at the example here, we could, if we are to measure the service metric, then we will not put it into, oh, how good was the check-in? How good was the immigration process? No, we will consider the whole service, right from buying the ticket till you got to Accra. What was the experience like? That's what the service metric is like. So the service metric basically measures everything. I only brought in the process because I want you to understand that a service is made up of different processes. Look at that.
So can we say the process metrics is a subset of service metrics?
Yes, that we can say that. Yes, but you may measure service metrics without talking about technological metrics. You can do that. That's why I didn't want to agree with your question.
What's meant by
They do what? Okay, let me explain this. Well, his question is that what if they acquire technology to improve their service? In the first place, we said we want to align IT with what? Business. So it's always been about improving the service using technology. But what I'm saying here is that we can measure service without involving technology. It shouldn't necessarily involve technology. Let me explain this. I can say that, or the airports can say that from last year to this year, the service they render by way of like people ticketing with them and then actually taking a flight, it has improved by 10%. It doesn't mean that there has been a 10% improvement in their technological investment. It doesn't mean that. It's possible, it's even possible that they haven't invested in technology at all. It's even possible that there has been 100% improvement in technology. But that is different from the service metric. We need a metric which will measure the whole process, like all the processes put together, the whole value we propose or we say we are delivering. We are measuring the whole thing. What improvements do we have there? How do we quantify whatever improvements we have over there? That's what we mean by the service metric. That makes sense now. But we'll still explain the service metric. The other slides coming, we'll explain the service metric. Yeah, I think you wanted to ask.
Now, say that maybe like I said, like the airport, so maybe we can measure the whole, maybe buying a ticket, passing through the check-in.
Put all this together.
We can measure that one, and we can also say that maybe at the check-in only.
Good.
We want to measure how the service at the check-in counter.
So that's the process metric. Yes,
Then when we are taking it, that will be the.
exactly.
So this question, how was your trip? How was
In fact, I
that
think-
one is just service?
Yes, AWA has started doing that. Before you reach wherever you are going, you would have gotten an email from them, asking them like, how do you find their service? It's not about the check-in alone or the immigration side alone or the waiting. It's about everything, right from how you even book the ticket online, because they have like a system online where you book the ticket, right from there till your arrival. So we are saying that. Is there any question?
Yes, sir. So just to add to what you just said. When you have to pay the internet from Ghana to Ethiopia, let's say you acquire your ticket from Ghana here. So even once you're in the aircraft, we already show you the next hotel that you are going to sleep. Then the plane will transit there and keep going. From the hotel, from the airport, various hotels will come with their cars. Then after picking every hotel vehicle want to pay in a way, so that your next coming,
You come to them.
you will try to go to that particular hotel. So at the end of the day, you would like to compare the holistically, if I just compare the whole flight experience. Everything could be all right, but maybe that process from airport to hotel may be different. So when we are explaining this, we may say the process metrics. Or reaching it to my hotel, the services there wasn't good. Apart from that, it was all okay.
Yes, so I get what he said. So he's giving an example where the whole service was good, but a part of it wasn't good. So in something like this, if let's say they are taking your feedback on a scale of 1 to 10, you may say that you are rating them 8 because that particular side was not the best. So because that side was not the best, and remember we said we are dealing with what end-to-end measurement. So you can rate them 8 out of 10 because that particular side was not good. It is now up to them to go back and say that our service was rated 8 out of 10. Let's try to quantify the various processes in the service. When they quantify that, at the end of the day, they will realize that a lot of people will score that part low. That process, which was not good, people will score it low, and they will know that this process is what is leading to the decrement in the overall service rating. So let's improve that process. Yes, so that's how the process metric interrelates with the service metric. So when it comes to the service metric, we say that they provide an end-to-end measurement of service performance. And I think we've explained basically, because even with your question, it shows that you understand what the service metric looks out for. So we are dealing with end-to-end measurement. Example of service level metrics include the following: the result of a customer satisfaction survey indicating how much IT contributes to customer satisfaction. So we are looking at customer satisfaction as a whole, but we want to focus on how IT contributes to customer satisfaction. Okay, we've invested in IT. Now in order to be able to tell if this investment has been worthwhile or not, let's measure customer satisfaction, because that IT investment was supposed to enhance our customer satisfaction. Let's measure customer satisfaction. It's a service level, because customer satisfaction is not just one part. When we spoke about the airport thing, my satisfaction is supposed to or when I say I'm satisfied with their service, it doesn't mean just one part. It's supposed to be everything I've gone through since I patronize their service. So customer satisfaction is one of the examples of service level. Then we also have cost of executing a transaction. For example, the bank will use this metric to measure the cost of a transaction that is carried out through different service channels, such as the internet, mobile banking, ATM, and then a branch. So the cost of executing a transaction could also be a service level metric we are measuring. When we say cost of executing a transaction, now this is what we are talking about. We are using the example of a bank. If a bank wants to know how much it costs the bank for people to maybe withdraw from the bank using SMS or using internet banking, ATM, it has different costs. All these are services because the whole withdrawal process is a service. So to find the cost of it, we could know how much it costs us when people use the internet banking service, how much people cost us when they use their mobile phones, when they walk to the branch, or when they use an ATM. Then another service level metric we could use is the efficiency of service, which is based on the average time to complete a specific service. So apart from the cost of executing a transaction, we could also be trying to measure the time it takes for a service to be completed. Excuse me. Somebody on my time is so easy. Once in a car, I'll go back to your key. So time to complete a service is also a cost. It's also a cost related to services. So we are saying efficiency of service, which is based on the average time to complete a specific service. So I think we've mentioned this. A service is not just a process, but it consists of multiple processes. Great.
Government performance metrics usually follows the process. Establishing critical processes to meet customer requirements. This helps enterprises with developing manageable metrics. Usual. Huh? You see it.
Let's cause level as invested on the business.
No, me, I didn't say that. So.
Yesterday, I drove with the next.
I didn't want to say I said. Because that one, never, I would have more. So you see, development performance metric usually follows the process of establishing critical processes to meet customer requirements. So if you want to
So when we are developing a metric, these are the processes we should follow. So the first one is that we should establish a critical process to meet customer requirements. We want to develop a metric, how do we even identify what we will consider in developing the metric? So we are saying that we need to identify or establish the critical processes we need to be able to meet customer requirements. This helps the enterprise to develop manageable metrics so that we don't end up having so many metrics. We need just a few relevant ones. So if anything doesn't meet customer requirements, then there's no need taking a metric out of it. When we say customer requirements, customer may be internal or external. Are you aware of that? The customer may be internal or external. Who are the internal customers? So let's, you are with UDS, right? Oh, I thought you said you were with UDS.
Yeah.
Your other colleague at work, either your boss, your let me see, your senior colleague, you are all customers.
Good. And the thing being that anybody who consumes your service is your customer. In some organization, some people, some employees are there to provide services for other employees to consume by way of furthering their own activities. So for example, if you look at a bank, for instance, mostly those are the back office. When the tellers want to complete some transactions, they will contact those at the back office. It means those are the back office, their customers are the tellers. Their customers are the tellers. So it means your customers could be either internal or external. Once you know your customers, you try to identify the things that meet your customer requirements. If something doesn't meet customer requirement, or if something is not related to customers' requirements, then there's no need having a metric on it. In fact, we don't need, if we are in an organization, we don't need to measure how well something is working if it is not related to any of our customers, either internal or external customers. Okay, so we established. Pardon?
This example, just as you said, now the banks are now going paperless. At first, you just come on the counter, there are a lot of papers. Check deposits, cash deposits, ATM request form, and all those things.
Yeah.
So in terms of the cash transactions, now you just walk to the cashier and you will just mention the account number you are doing the transaction on. They will keep, they'll confirm the name on the account. Then you hand over the cash. Then they will check the cash and now print out a receipt
For you.
for you to sign. So you will not do the writing all and you will make a mistake and they'll tell you go back and correct. So it's a critical process that they are taking off.
Exactly.
So that it can increase the turnaround time. It can reduce the turnaround time.
Yeah. Thank you. So that's something that actually meets customer requirements. So we're also saying that as part of the process of developing performance metric, we should identify specific and quantifiable outputs of work from the identified process. So if, let's say, let's look at the example Mr. Wahab gave. If you are able to identify that the withdrawal process is actually something that meets customer requirements, so we want to have a metric on the withdrawal process. In step 2, what we are saying is that what exactly can we measure from that? So we can measure now the time involved in withdrawing. We could say that when it was paper-based, bank customers who worked in on the average could finish their withdrawal process in 30 minutes. Now that it is paperless, how many minutes is it taking them to complete a withdrawal cycle? That's what the step 2 is telling us. So we should identify the specific and quantifiable outputs of work that we want from that particular process we have identified. Then we should establish targets against which the results can be scored. This is how the target comes in. The targets are derived from the organizational goals or objectives. we said that we are investing in IT so that we can reduce the time the customer spends in our banking hall by 30%. That's what we want to do. Now, we have seen that customers who used to spend 30 minutes are now spending 5 minutes. So let's try to compare the 5 minutes they are spending in the banking hall against the 30% reduction from the previous time. Then we can tell if our investment is yielding the right result or not. That's what the step 3 is about. So you establish targets and then you match them against the results that have been scored. And the targets typically will be coming from the organizational goals that we have. Yes, sir. Please come. You said there are certain banks that have done what? Okay.
So they have it, they think about. They have it, and around that, somehow.
Okay.
So from the time that the customer walks into the step into the banking hall, the customer will give you this. So the time the customer by the end of the day, we pull out the records. We know the number of minutes per line to save particular number of people. And there is a rating system within the system that the customer can rate the airline and rate the line.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, and
So-
when you are just entering, there's a some that small
Timer.
receipts. You just enter, press and it will give you a small receipt and it will indicate the time you just entered. Until the time the fellow is serving you enter the code. And the system will now pick the time it issued the receipt and the time you accept.
So they can basically measure the turnaround. Okay. Okay. Yeah. So thank you for that example in this one. Okay. Okay. So it means the banks are actually even doing that. Yeah. So these are still like some recommendations when you are developing metrics. Some recommendations while developing metrics. One of the recommendations is that we normalize metrics to a common attribute parameter. What do we mean by a common attribute parameter? Common attribute parameter, starting with a parameter. Parameter simply means a specific unit to measure. That's what we mean by the parameter, a specific unit to measure. So we should focus on a specific unit you want to measure. If you are looking at, so in your example like this, turnaround time. If you are looking at turnaround time, you measure turnaround time. So it doesn't matter how satisfied that customer was. Your focus over there is the time the customer entered, so the time they were able to serve the customer. It doesn't matter whether the customer was satisfied or not. Maybe another metric will be looking at the satisfaction. But at any point in time, you focus on a common parameter or a normal parameter to use. Then you should also understand the characteristics of a good metric. It is very, very important. The characteristics of a good metric. Let's look at the banking example. Let's take 2 banks. When customers come, they spend 5 minutes, they are out. But they don't like the way they are treated. And then another bank, they spend 10 minutes, but they are treated very well. Which of these banks do you think the customers will go more often? The second one, where they spend 10 minutes, but they are treated well. So you realize that if, let's say, the bank focuses on just the time without actually measuring the importance or the satisfaction over there, they will be getting it wrong. So that's what we mean by understanding the characteristics of a good metric. What makes a good metric? Okay.
How to distinguish the priority. So the system is able to distinguish between that particular segment and such services are given to that particular. So let's say if a priority customer is the banking board, you are able to determine that there is a priority customer maintain the needs of the customer. So you are able to push out the particular according to the same step to the pay for that services. So I think that if you are paying for the service and you come into the market, I'm not going to say according to this. So you will not need to come up.
Exactly. Yes. Okay. That's
How do you identify the system that is, we have priorities. There's priorities and when we need to step into the banking. Priority customer. So whoever is using the system will know that there is a priority customer. Not the
Your question is, as soon as you enter, do you have a stand where you go and indicate your priority?
there is a system that is the condition that the impact. When you type, Mr. Wow was in MC, we use that particular system and other labs. Maybe pick the kind of services you want. So, there are different desks.
okay.
So based on that, everyone within the banking or bank access to that particular system. So you'll be able to tell that this is basically communicating, it's the same in this particular type of service. So you can be able to push out.
Attend to them. Okay, yeah. Thank you for that example too. Yeah. Okay, so understanding a good metric is also another recommendation. There is something we call vanity metrics. Vanity metric is where you are using metrics which looks good, but in actual fact, they have no real impact on the business. We call that kind of metric the vanity metric. So as much as possible, you should avoid vanity metrics. Vanity metrics, in other words, they are metrics which are not good metrics. So they are the opposite of good metrics. You should know how to identify good metrics and avoid vanity metrics. Let's look at an example of vanity metrics. Going back to the bank. If the bank wants to consider the number of people who enter the banking hall and leave, it may not be a good metric, but rather the number of people who enter to transact. For example, let's look at a bank in the middle of something like Mokola. You know, I don't know if it's common here. I don't really see it here, but in Accra, people enter the banking hall just to drink their water or to use their washroom. Oh, okay. Here I don't normally see it.
You go and sit down and pretend, they can even be shifted.
Exactly.
And they will pick their phone and.
So if the bank doesn't know and the bank says that, oh, in a day, 200 people enter into the banking hall. Every day, 200 people enter into the banking hall. Then it means our operations are moving well. It may be a vanity metric. It's possible that out of these 200 people, only 20 of them are there to transact. You get it? Which means measuring the number of people who enter the banking hall is not a good metric. That we call a vanity metric. But if you focus on the number of people who come to transact, that is a good metric because the transaction is your business. Okay, so as part of the recommendations, you should understand the characteristics of a good metric. Then you should avoid comparison against other similar enterprises. Here, what we mean is this. You know, first of all, we are doing all this because we are saying that our organization has some organizational goals or objectives. That enterprise across the road, we don't know what their goals are. So it's a bad idea to compare our metrics with theirs, unless we are certain that we have similar organizational goals, then you may compare. Other than that, under normal circumstance, you should avoid comparing your metrics against that of other organizations. Some other reasons why you shouldn't compare is that even though you may be in the same industry, but you may have different ways of functioning. An example is an organization which has gone, let's take the banks for instance, a bank which is gone paperless as against a bank which is not gone paperless. If you want to measure the amount of investment they have in IT, it will be far more than what the other bank is having. The reason being that they have gone paperless. And being paperless simply means that you need to invest a lot in IT. It doesn't mean that they are better than the organization that hasn't gone paperless. For all you know, going paperless may not be the best move for that particular bank at the point in time. Let's take an example like a bank which is focused on agri development. You are dealing with farmers. Most of these farmers don't even have smartphones. And even if they had smartphones, some of them or most of them may not be able to use the complex banking apps. Yeah, so as much as possible, it is in your best interest to avoid too much technology or automation when dealing with people like this. But if you don't look at it that way and you say that, oh, this bank, they are our competitors and they are going paperless, so we have to go paperless, you will end up taking the wrong move. So as much as possible, the organization's objective should inform your metrics, not necessarily by comparing with other organizations or similar organizations. You focus on your own metrics because the metrics are what will meet your organizational objectives. Okay. Then we should also minimize cost-related comparisons. Cost-related. What do we mean by cost-related comparison? One organization, it costs them 1,000 cedis to achieve A, B, C. We also want to do the same thing, and we also want it to cost us that much. As much as possible, we should avoid something like this when we are developing metrics. Why do we say this? Because there's always a context to whatever metric you see from another organization. You may not be in that context. It may not favor you. You look at an organization. Let's take two different organizations. One in the West. You want to ask a question? Okay, so let me just finish. Then you ask. One organization in, let's say, Europe, and then the other in Africa here. And because you saw how much they consume by way of electricity, you want to also ensure that your consumption of electricity is at that same rate. It's very possible that over there, because of the weather, when people go to work, they don't need AC. So the ACs are off. Africa is not that way. Africa is hot. So when we put our AC on. So you realize that it is only natural that we will spend more, or the organization in Africa will spend more on bills, electricity bills, because over here we need the AC. It might not be the same over there. So these are two different contexts. If you want to compare purely based on the cost, you always be making a mistake. The context is very important. Mr. Wab, you wanted to say that?
Like a CKT.
Okay, yeah.
For instance, they have heard that UBS is using UCM, which is very costly. Looking at the size of UBS, they feel like going for UCM will be the best for them. But there's an alternative that CKT UCAS can use. They can use the management information system.
Exactly.
But they feel like because they are also a university,
And
we must also go in for UCMs. So at the end of the day, it's going to affect them. Even though it will help them, but in terms of costs,
it may not be the
so
best
by
move.
going in for many information system would have served the same purpose.
Exactly. So I think that's also another point to buttress that aspect. So comparison necessarily is not a good metric. Yeah. Unless you are certain that you both have the same situations, you are both in the same situations, and you can use that as a benchmark. Okay, so we should also focus on work activities and then outcomes. What do we mean by work activities and outcomes? Going back to the issue of the bank, You see, the number of people that enter the bank, it's not really a work activity because they didn't come there to transact. You get it? They didn't come there to transact. So to develop good metrics, you should focus on the work activities involved. You should focus on, so you focus more on the people who came to the bank to transact and not just people that entered the banking hall, and then outcomes as well. While they entered the banking hall and they transacted, what was the outcome? What was the output of that activity? So you focus on measuring the outcomes as well. And then you keep the metrics to a manageable quantity. Having too much metrics is never a good idea. The organization will lose track. The organization will lose track because imagine an organization that has up to 200 metrics. Which one do they focus on improving? It will be very difficult for the organization to keep up because they wouldn't even know which of these metrics is helping, which one is not helping. So as much as possible, while developing the metrics, you ensure that you keep the metrics to the barest minimum, very manageable number, such that you can always monitor the various matrices, and then you can tell which one needs attention at any point in time. If you take two different organizations, let's take let's say a security agency, and then two security agencies. One has up to 10 different matrices they are measuring. Then the other has about 2,000 matrices they are measuring. At any point in time, those with 2,000 matrices, they may even overlook the important matrices while focusing on the less important ones. But if you have up to 10, 10 is manageable. At any point in time, you can always have an overview of the 10 matrices you have and tell which one you need to improve on. So as much as possible, we need to also keep the metrics to a manageable quantity. Okay, yes, please.
That's okay. This is why. Organization.
Exactly.
And the other aspect of regulations, when you look at, let's say, bank for bank, you can't put it on regulation. The banking sector. It's overwhelmed, it's well, and
Exactly, yes. So I think he's given a good example to buttress that. He says that if you look at some organizations, the matrices may be so much that at the end of the day, the people that are supposed to manage these metrics, they end up being overwhelmed. Imagine one person having to monitor 2,000 different matrices. You will definitely lose sight of some of them. Yes, okay, so that's what we mean by keeping them to a manageable quantity. Now we are implementing it. What can we do to ensure that if, let's say, we are implementing a metric, what can we do to ensure that the metric is implemented effectively? One of them is to ensure leadership commitment. Let's take a typical bank, for instance. Imagine you are bringing a clocking system to ensure that you maximize the number of or the working or the contact hours each employee has. And the management, or let's even consider the operational heads, they are not in support of that. Will it work? It will not work. Once we are implementing a metric, the number one commitment we need is the commitment of management or leadership. So one of the ways to effectively implement a metric is leadership commitment. So you secure a buy-in from senior management and establish dedicated governance body. Once we need to introduce a metric, let's secure a buy-in from senior management, and then let's ensure that there's a governance body for that. There's a group of people who are responsible for ensuring that this particular metric is being adhered to. Then also risk assessment. when you are implementing a metric, you need to do some risk assessment. Identify and prioritize all the IT risks which are relevant to the organization. Let's take the example you gave, like what's the name? I think you gave one particular example before the issue of the number of metrics we have. You say when you come in, there's a queue, exactly. So something like this, when you are putting it in place, there will be some IT related risk. You need, in order to make this metric implementation effective, you need to identify those risks. The device responsible for giving you the slot, it could be stolen. People can tamper with the device. Somebody can come and try to find a way of setting the device such that even in the morning when he hasn't come to work, the device will clock him in. Like people will find different ways. People will find different ways, or maybe ensuring that when customers come to pick the 10, till the time he serves them, the device reduces the time. People will try to find various ways. The device could also be stolen. Just like we said, there are always physical aspect of IT risk. The device could be stolen because if the device is movable, what shows that one Saturday when the workers come to work and they close, somebody will not put it in his bag and go and sell it. So you need to identify all these things and see how to mitigate them. Okay.
At first, they used to time and they write your time for you. And
Good.
they brought the management time. So we do found the software, the process suspended. Go in, download the program, then you suspend that program, that counts the time.
Counts the
Pause
time.
it.
Exactly.
So you can be there for about.
And open again.
When you count the time, it's not up.
Yeah.
And you open to pick what the.
So I'll be there when you come, my time is not.
No,
So
exactly.
you can't say that.
Yeah. So that's a very good example of the risk assessment side. So if you are an internet cafe operator and let's say you want to optimize your usage and you bring in this, you should also consider the possibility that people will come in with software which will suspend your timer. Okay, so you assess the risk and then you identify and prioritize all the risks that are relevant. So process improvement also is important. You need to align COVID processes with existing practices and adapt them to your specific needs. When you look at the COVID manual itself, the processes that are outlined there may be slightly different from what you do in your organization. As much as possible, you need to adapt them. Look at the existing processes, then adapt them and see how well you can change your existing processes to meet your needs. When we say we are adapting something, what does it mean? When we are adapting something, you can either adopt a process or adapt it. Okay. Okay. So when you are adapting it, it means you are making a change so that it fits into yours. But where you are adopting it, you are taking it wholesale and using it. So to adopt, you take it wholesale and use, but to adapt, you take it, you make slight modifications to match what you are already doing. So that's another item we need to ensure effective implementation. Then we also have communication and training. Communication and training. No matter how well you are implementing COVID and developing your metrics, if you are not able to communicate to others in the organization, the changes you are bringing, and train them to be able to follow whatever metrics you have in place, it will not work. Anytime there's change in an organization, anytime there's change, you need to train people to get used to that change or to even understand the change. And you also need to communicate whatever change you are introducing. So communication and training are also very important. Then we have continuous monitoring and measurement. you have come. You've done whatever you need to do. But we are saying that regularly you assess the progress towards the goals. We said we were going to buy 10 more computers and increase the number of tellers in the bank. And when we do that, at the end of the year, we should have increased the number of people we serve on daily basis from 1,000 to 2,000. Now we have bought the 10 computers. Every month, let's go to see what is the change or what change do we have in terms of the number of customers we serve on monthly basis. Every month, let's see, has there been a change? Has there been a change? Is there a need for us to step in and make a modification to whatever metrics we have set or whatever investments we have put in? So continuously, you need to monitor, measure and monitor. That's how you ensure that you are able to find things when they are going wrong and then you rectify them before you get to the end. Other than that, if you don't do that, and at the beginning of the year, you invest so much in IT and you set your goals, then at the end of the year, you come to sit and you realize that, the goal was not met. You investigate and then you find out that it's because the whole process was being misapplied. This is something you have realized at the end of the year, meaning the whole year is wasted. But if you are doing this on monthly basis, in the first month, you go in and you realize that the goal you set before you made an investment, the goals, we are not on track to meet the goals. Then you can come back and find out what is going wrong. Once you identify what is going wrong, you can resolve your thing. Then the following month, you come back again to measure and see, are we now on track? If we are still not on track, you find out what is wrong. What are we getting wrong? Once you find that out, you implement that change. Next month, you come to measure where we are going. So by the 4th, 5th month, you realize that you are on track to meet that 100% improvement in the number of customers you serve. Then you know that your IT, but it doesn't end there. Continuously, on regular basis, you need to be monitoring performance. So we are saying that for implementation of COVID metrics to be effective, we need to continuously monitor and measure our output on regular basis. Okay. So I think this should end us with the COVID side. I will share the COVID document from Isaka with you on the WhatsApp. So when I'm sending this slide, I will also send the COVID document from Isaka. Okay, please, if there are any questions. Are there any questions? Guys online, please, do you have any question? Yeah, Mr. Buhari and Mr. Maxinos, do you have any questions?
No, sir.
Okay. So they also see some questions.
Because I'm new to this matrix thing. I'm not too.
Is someone asking a question?
Conversant with it. Hello.
Hello. Yeah, please, are you asking a question?
Hello. Sir.
Okay, please go ahead.
Yes, I wanted to know if it can be applied as a way of developing software or something. I just want to know that whether
you want to know if this can be applied as a way of developing software.
Yes.
What we are talking about here is the metrics in COVID. It's not related to system development. So this is purely operational.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, this is purely operational.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Okay, sir.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Any other question?
No, sir.
Yeah. Okay, guys. So if there's no question here, to call it a day. Thank you very much. Hey, you have